I'm Matt Carey, documentary editor at Deadline, and we have an incredibly absorbing story for you now. It is The Supermodels, the documentary series from Apple TV Plus, and we are joined by the executive producer and director Roger Ross Williams, the Oscar winner, and by producer director Larissa Bills. Thank you for being with us. When we talk supermodels, you know it's going to be Naomi Campbell, Linda Evangelista, Cindy Crawford, and Christy Turlington. They are the subject of this really, as I say, super absorbing series, which really is quite revelatory at the same time. Before we get into some questions, let's take a look at a clip from The Supermodels.
Remember, in those glory days, it wasn't perfect because Naomi wasn't always booked to do the shows.
We only have one black girl this season. It was that time. Black girls can only do shows in the summer. Black girls can only wear the bright colored clothes.
I said to them, if you don't book her, you don't get me.
This incredible song, this incredible designer. The moment of the women singing the song, it was just like it all came together.
You could feel that moment. That is a moment that you kind of knew would be iconic, actually.
It's like, okay, that's what a supermodel is.
So Naomi Campbell says really at the very beginning of this series, which is true when you are the subject of still photographs, there's no words to go with our pictures. Here, you are finally putting the words to the pictures and letting them tell their stories.
It was so great to get them in the chair for the first time. You know, their stories have always been told through others, through, journalists and tabloid media and everything else. And, this was for Larissa and I an opportunity to really let them own their stories and and hear their side of it. They are iconic and they've lived through an incredible time. Larissa and I both, grew up, came of age, loved to work, hanging out in that time. And we're just nostalgic for a person of a certain age. To hear them tell their stories was just so exciting for me.
And Larissa, I think one of the key through lines of the series is how these women developed agency. Of course, they were all teenagers. I think each one of them was teenagers when they started. They're surrounded by powerful managers, powerful brands, powerful designers, really strong personalities among photographers. Somehow, over time, through their own strength of personality and character, they were able to develop agency that was not common among models.
Absolutely. I mean, I think prior to the supermodels, the idea of modeling was sort of something that was done over here or done, if you think about the Barbizon School of Modeling or something from the 50s, this very sort of, it's something pretty women do before they find a husband. And I think there have always been standouts in that industry. There certainly was Twiggy and Verushka, and even going back to Irving Penn's early photographs. But really, these women, I think, be it their force of personality, plus the time, plus the culture, it became a zeitgeist where they were able to own their own image. And I don't mean that literally, because there were certainly, there's certainly an element of other people owning the photograph, but they got to be bigger than the brand, bigger than the designer that was walking them down the runway. And they were the big draw, and everyone knew their names.
So many incredible anecdotes in this series. For instance, Cindy Crawford, she goes, I think it's to Rome, and they cut her hair without her consent. It's just kind of shocking. That was a shocking thing. And Larissa, maybe you can also speak to the fact that it was really, I think, it's super hard for anyone in that industry, a lot of snakes in that industry, but it was harder for Naomi Campbell being a woman of color, no question about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think in terms of the story you told about Cindy, I remember speaking with the editor at the time, and the editor sort of being like, big whoop, she gets her hair cut, yeah. But, as a woman, I think about, like, that's a deal. That's, your hair is your look, your power, your whatever. It means something. And I think to be 15 years old or 16 years old and not being asked, and all of a sudden you've got this like boyish cut. Cindy says it herself that she would never do it again. She's never cut her hair since. And it's interesting that she's become so known. And again, these all sound like very shallow things, but when you really get into the depth of it, she's the hair. It's the hair. It's this glamour. It's this bigness of fullness. And it's interesting. And in terms of Naomi, I mean, Roger, do you want to speak to your couch interview? And
well, it was like the middle of the night, and Naomi had just landed from Nigeria, and I went over and to the apartment and just did this very, just chill, relaxed interview. And Naomi has been through so much because she had to be the only one. Right? She had to be the first. She had to break down the doors. She had to deal with incredible humiliation. The other women had to fight and stick up for her as a group and say, "We're not gonna. You don't take her. You don't take us." She had, and the rest. She was lying on the couch. She told me the story about how she went to, because she never got the print job. She only could do runway. Right? They didn't let the black girls do print, and so she just waited. She was at this go-see for a print job, print job, and she just waited all day long. Like, they kept her there, like 8 hours, like sitting in a waiting room, and never called her in, and the humiliation of that, she was like, tears up, like going back to that feeling of what she had to go through. But she was like, I'm not going to be defined by the color of my skin. I'm not going to let it stop me. Naomi's incredibly, as we know, incredibly strong-willed, incredibly proud and powerful. And she was like, I'm not going to let any of this define me. I'm going to just keep going. And I think that's why Naomi Campbell is Naomi Campbell, because no one's going to stop Naomi Campbell. Not even racism. I mean, her first shoot, she was on a plantation, and they were shooting as, imagine, she's in the South for the first time, and she's shooting on a plantation, and the humiliation of that, and how she had to be really strong, and she went back, and she didn't give up. Naomi's not she doesn't give up.
Yeah, and I think it just is so revealing in how, people get to that level. It's not by accident. And there's many factors that go into it. They're stunningly beautiful women. However, they're off the charts in terms of their drive and determination. And also, Roger, you've been speaking to this, but Larissa, maybe you comment. What's so unusual, again, is that they stuck up for each other. Mm-hmm. And you think of that business, I think from the outside, one would think probably it would be more likely that they would see each other as rivals, but they did not.
No. And I think that's a testament also to, their strength as women. But, they also had sort of each a unique look, and that look was sort of different from each other, but also for the time. So, while, Linda could evoke certain, glamorous old movie stars, for instance, and they all had a lot of range, which I think was really interesting. So they saw the value in how the sum of them was greater than each of them individually. But they absolutely, I mean, Linda says, and I think Christy reiterated that when Naomi was not getting booked for shows, they banded together and they said, if you're not taking her, you don't get me. And Naomi remembers that as well. And it's a bold move to make when you're young and you're successful and you're desired in making money, but they know their value, and they knew Naomi's value as well.
Oh, I think it's so remarkable because, the same thing applies to us, many of us in the working world. When do people stand up for their colleagues? I mean, it just doesn't happen that often. So it really should be honored what they did. Roger, you get some amazing people in this series. Some of the photographers who were key to the rise of these supermodels, but also designers like John Galliano and Michael Kors. I could listen to Michael Kors all day long. There's something fascinating about him. But can you talk about some of the other people who were in the series and really helped shed light on the achievements of these supermodels?
I just want to say, that how they, what you said about sticking up for people, Marissa said to imagine if you don't take Roger, you're not going to get me. So, so like,
There's that.
I think, like everyone jumped at the chance to do and to talk about the iconic ladies. I mean, how could you not? And there's some, memorable. Michael Kors is always good. He's always hysterical. He's always funny. He's always real, and in a way, he's Michael Kors. He's very sort of down to earth and straightforward. I love John Galliano, who's a character, of course, and a legend with a insane history, and and his own documentary in his own right. Who are some of the memorable ones?
Donatella, of course.
Oh my God, Donatella Versace.
Donatella.
And we had an interview in Virgiani's apartment, which she has not touched since he was murdered. It's the same. It's the same exactly as he left it, and we even got to go and tour his closet, which was really that closet was.
Oh, it was amazing.
It was amazing. I was like, I've never seen a closet the closet, like you can't even imagine. Beautiful, just stunning. We want to live in the closet. Not in that literal sense, but
Not literally.
because he did not live in the closet. The interviews were so fun and so much, it was so great, and there were so many memorable ones. What's some of your favorites?
Oh, well, I mean, for me personally, Arthur Elgort, the photographer, I had worked for him. He was my first job out of NYU, my first film job. And going back up into the studio with Linda and Christy, and, now being a director was just unbelievable. It was such an incredible moment. Yeah, and also talking with Anna Sui, as a female designer, these stylists, Grace Coddington, like what an icon, and Tawny Goodman. And I will say, everyone says, well, how did you get to these people? And if one of these women picks up the phone, stuff happens really fast. So I don't feel like we struggled with access. If anything, we struggled with the schedule, because I think we learned, like, fashion moves, it's so incessant, like it just keeps going and going. And as soon as there's a season, the fall shows, and they're New York and Paris and Milan, and then there's a whole nother one, and it's like it never ends. So to find opportunities to get in and meet these people, it was usually very last minute and very rushed. And from a production standpoint, that was a little harried, but it was extraordinary because it would literally happen. Like, you're going to be talking to Marc Jacobs, you're going to be talking to Kim Jones, who is like the loveliest guy. And that's the other thing. These people are they're humble, weirdly, and they're artists. So it's fascinating.
There's so many revelations in the series, and it really explores just this cultural moment that has real depth to it, and extraordinarily beautiful women and beautiful people. So it's got so much to it. It is The Supermodels from Apple TV Plus. We have been joined by Roger Ross Williams, the executive producer and director, and by the producer director, Larissa Bills, thank you so much for being with us.